Hey guys, Jason here with SE Lock and Key. Wanted to go over some of the more common hand tools that locksmiths commonly use and how it led me into choosing the right multi-tool for our work style. So we use on most jobs, number 2 Phillips screwdriver is the most common thing, of course, used to take door locks on and off. I choose a round, smooth shank, about 4 inches. Klein is one of my favorites, except for this. Klein, if you're listening, I hate how that comes down, but anyway. With the smooth shank, you're less likely to scratch the knob because you do have to angle screwdrivers to get these screws in and out. Of course, Phillips or flathead screwdriver. This is a cabinet tip 3/16 used for removing on older strike plates. They have flathead screws that hold it on. Old Quickset and new Wiser use 3-bolt through bolts that have a flathead surface that you have to use to tighten it down. Small flathead screwdrivers are used most commonly on storefront glass doors to tighten and remove the cylinder that is in to remove it for rekeying purposes. Small number 1 Phillips screwdriver is most commonly used to remove the screws holding on the tailpiece or the cam on the back of almost all mortise cylinders. Some of them have a flathead screw, which is where you go back to your flathead driver. And a hex wrench set. This is a standard set, and no multi-tool has a good selection of hex wrenches, so I clip this in my front pocket using it as a clip like that. I've replaced the hex screws that come with this because on some doors you have to get right up next to the door, and when you turn it, that hex bolt that was in there before will scratch the finish. By getting some Chicago screws at the hardware store and replacing those, which is kind of a tricky task, you lessen your chances of that scratching a door. So that stays with me pretty much always. Pliers. No multi-tool, I've decided, can beat a dedicated pair of pliers. And Knipex or Nipex, however you want to call it, the Cobra or the Alligator pliers is my favorite. It expands out, lets you get a grip on stuff that you need. Won't hurt your hand. Very, very good steel. Vanadium steel, I believe, made in Germany. And German, the best pliers you could have regardless of your multi-tool. Last but not least, a file. Most locksmiths don't tote this around in their pocket, but a file is used to file keys to get them ready for impressioning, which is a way to make keys when some keys are lost. For filing the frame or the plates in case the bolt is misaligned sometimes and it causes it to have problems come out. Files used for, basically filing metal, smoothing off finishes, enlarging holes. So that leads us to multi-tools. Over a few Christmases back, I kind of got into the multi-tool thing because they had these little cheapy Wingman and Sidekicks for like $17, $18 each. They're okay. The only bad things is pretty much everything in regards to a cheap versus a more expensive multi-tool. I bought them for the Phillips and the flathead. Well, the worst thing about these is they fold up. You put pressure on it, it folds up, you hit your hand, it hurts. The screwdriver bits do. They're a 2D version of a Phillips head, and they will work in little bitty tiny number 1 screws. But again, sometimes you got to put a lot of pressure on these and it'll fold up on you, and that hurts. Same thing with the flathead. The file on these is very short. It works okay for filing. It works okay for filing aluminum, a little bit better, but it's short, and it'll fold up on you as well. The box cutter is good or the package opener is good for blister packs. Spring-loaded pliers, horrible cutters, and it's a good entry-level tool if you're not going to use it a lot, but when you go to bear down on it, it'll hurt your hand. It's painful. So after that, I was like, I'm going to buy a locking style multi-tool. You got Rebar and you got Supertool 300. Of course, there's the Wave and all these other variants, but I didn't need an outside opening blade because I carry a dedicated pocket knife for that. So I chose the Supertool, even though it's big. I deliberated it a lot in the store, but the main selling point for me was the length of the Phillips driver on it. However, it is longer, but when you're using it for door locks, you really can't effectively because that nail nick will nick into the finish. So you kind of got to unscrew with half turns, which means you have to reposition it every time. Now, there are extension kits, and I bought one to see, you know, maybe that'll solve my problem, but I don't really carry it around. I don't want to have to carry around something else. But there are extension kits. They come with some little flat 2D, again, drivers, but it also works with a regular driver. So you could extend it, and you can use it for door locks, but it's just kind of unwieldy, and, you know, it'll work, but I'm not fond of it. So it's a number 2/number 1. This thing works perfect, in case you're wondering, for these mortise cylinder screws. Also works good for the screws that are holding the plate on. So if you're going to service a storefront door, you know you got one to service. Between this and the small flathead, which is on here, you can use the Phillips to unscrew the plate screws, and then the flathead actually works really perfectly for the retainer screws, set screws here, which will replace your small flathead there. Also works good on these that have a flathead instead of a Phillip head, and since it locks, it's not gonna go anywhere. Switching over to the fatter drivers, or the fatter flatheads. There's two of them. There's a medium and a larger one. The medium is kind of like this 3/16 driver. The larger one actually fits perfect for even though it's recessed, it fits just perfectly down in there to tighten it all the way down or to loosen it. Of course, you could use the medium one for well, but this fits perfectly across. Let's see what else is in here. The file's wonderful. Long, two different grits, or one's cross cut and the other one's this way. Absolutely great for aluminum storefronts where, you know, the metal can get bent in. You need to smooth it out. Works fairly good to, you know, to get the keys ready for an impressioning. A lot of us carry specific impressioning style files, but in a pinch you can use that. The only other thing is, okay, so the knife blade, again, I don't need an outside knife blade. This one locks into place. I've used this running wire for access control, you know, put it up against the drywall, beat a hole through there. I know you're not supposed to do that, but I do. Once you get a hole, you can close that up and then switch over to your wonderful saw and cut out the rest of the drywall. Now, it is almost thin enough to be able to get a really good curve. So once you get a kind of an oval cut out, then you can square up the corners and you can put your box in the wall and tighten it down. So that saw's great for drywall. Only other thing I missed, let's talk about the pliers. You know, going back to this, absolutely no other pliers beat dedicated pliers. These are great. I use them to sometimes the tips are good and narrow and really well machined, and I use it sometimes to yank nails when I am mortising a plate into a door and there's a nail behind it. I can like grab in there and grab the head of the nail and lever it out. I don't use the cutters a whole lot. They are replaceable. I have used it a few times in a pinch to strip some real fine wire. That's kind of an exercise in patience, but it does work. There's also a stripper here that I wasn't able to really do with that gauge of wire. It may work for bigger, like 14 gauge wire, but I've only used all that a few times. Unscrewing nuts and stuff, you know, it works pretty good. It's there in a bind if you don't want to have to walk all the way back to your truck. If I had to do more than one or two unscrewing of bolts or nuts, I would definitely, though, make the trip back to get it a dedicated pair of pliers. But overall, you know, the rebar is the same thing. It's got a small flathead on it too. It's just smaller, a little bit smaller head, obviously, all the way around, and a lot lighter. But after using the Super Tool for a while, I keep this in a bag, wear this all the time, and you know, I pound it on both sides a lot. You're not supposed to do that. But if I was going to buy any tool for locksmith related duties, skip your lower end, you know, tools, get you a Super Tool 300 and see how you like it, because it doesn't, while it doesn't replace dedicated tools, it is a great, wonderful thing, and it saved me many a trip back and forth to the truck. So there you go. Thanks again. Bye.